And now we welcome Charlie Brenneman to the show. How's it going, man?
Good. How are you doing?
Awesome. So first question for you has to be, how'd you come up with the name Spaniard?
Well, actually, it started. I was a Spanish major in college. I was a Spanish teacher after I graduated. But during college, my wrestling coach at wrestling camps started calling me Spaniard because of the Spanish major, and also I had really long hair, and he just said I kind of looked like a Spaniard, so it stuck from there.
Nice, nice. Now, let's also just briefly get started. How did you get your start in MMA? Was it wrestling?
Yeah, wrestling was my base. I wrestled since I was 8 years old, and when I was teaching, I was a high school Spanish teacher for 3 years, and I just felt like, I wasn't, I was happy, but I wasn't doing exactly what I wanted to do. So, I looked at all my options of what I could do, living the atypical life, a non-9 to 5, and fighting was about the only thing I came up with, so I decided to pursue it.
Right. Okay, obviously we have to touch on this quickly. Your pros versus Joes experience. How was that?
It was awesome, man. I'm out right now hanging out with some friends, and I got asked that question, who are all the pros on Pros versus Joes? And I mean, it happened, I guess, almost 6 years ago now.
Yeah.
But it was awesome. The pros were very cool to us. They understood how neat of an experience it was for us. So they were, friendly and talkative, and it was overall just a great experience.
Okay. Where are you training right now, and how often do you train?
I'm training. I train in Whippany, New Jersey, and I do, all of my training between Whippany, New Jersey at AMA Fight Club, which is my gym, and then I also travel to New York City 1 day a week to train at Renzo Gracie's Academy, and then I do my strength and conditioning and wrestling over in Pennsylvania.
Okay, and your drive time between each school is pretty much legendary at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. It's something that I just can't avoid. I'm trying to make it more efficient, and I have. But, yeah, I mean, as of now, I have to do quite a bit of travel. Plus, my fiance lives in PA, so that just adds to it. But, it's part of the necessary evil of doing what I do, so I'm just kind of sticking it out.
Okay, and that leads me to this question. It might be a stupid question, but why not just pick up and move to Vegas or New Mexico?
I'm really a family-oriented person, and I feel far enough away from home, being in New Jersey, which is only 4 hours from where I live. So to just up and leave to Vegas or California or somewhere like that, it's not me. It doesn't fit me or my lifestyle.
That's cool. What weight are you typically walking around at right now?
Probably right this minute I weigh 187, 188. But in the mornings, if I'm training, I normally weigh about 85 or 86.
Okay, and do you ever have problems with cutting weight?
No, I'm pretty fortunate. Having wrestled my entire life, cutting weight is somewhat second nature. I know exactly what I can eat, what I can drink, when I can do it. So it's not that bad. Granted, the last day before weigh-ins is never fun, but there are plenty of guys who have it worse than I do.
Okay, and when you're not training, what do you like to do?
I'm a pretty simple guy. I wrote an email to someone today, and I said family, my fiance, my dogs, and fighting makes me happy.
Nice.
So it's one of those four things.
Okay, and I've been looking at your record, and you've been seems like you're fighting every 3 years, and even in UFC, not a lot of guys fight 3 times a year. So how important to you is that?
Yeah, I love it. That's one of the things that you're right. I've been fortunate, with the UFC. I've had a couple long breaks. My first 2 fights were 5 months apart, but my last 3 fights, 2 fights, and then I'm working on one now that should be coming up soon. Are about that time frame. So it's awesome. I mean, it gives me enough time to kind of mentally relax and then get right back on the horse. And, we only get paid when we fight, so that's another aspect to it.
Yeah. What's your greatest accomplishment in MMA?
Well, obviously, I think my biggest win is beating Rick Story. So that was probably my
Nice.
best night ever in MMA. But, getting to the UFC was a goal of mine. I was a teacher, and I remember talking to one of my friends, and I said, one day I'm going to fight in the UFC. And that was before I even trained one day. And so to get there, it was really the fulfillment of a dream.
Sure. Let's talk about injuries. Have you had many injuries in your career?
Not many, knock on wood, but I did have one serious injury. I fractured my left orbital socket, so I had to have surgery on it. But, you know, like you said, knock on wood, that's about the only thing I've had thus far.
Now, what was the injury time on that?
It was actually in training. So I got injured in May.
Was this the one with Frank Yeager?
Yeah, and Chris Ligori is actually the kid who kicked me, but it was the three of us sparring. But, you know, I got hurt in May, and then I fought again in September. So it was only about 3 or 4 months, but, you know, there was a good month and a half where I couldn't really do anything.
Okay, so we always hear stories about guys thrown up in the back before they go out for their fight. Have you ever had a lot of nerve problems before your fights?
No, sir. I'm cool as a cucumber. It's one thing that came with age, and it came with maturity and you know, putting the training in. You know, right before I tell people, right before I go out in a fight, my heartbeat is a line, a straight line, because it's, you know, probably resting at, you know, whatever it is, 55 or something at that point. And I'm not nervous at all. I'm ready to get the job done.
Big fight this weekend. Who'd you got? Jones versus Machida.
I'm really excited for this, and I think realistically, if anyone is going to give Jones a serious problem, it's going to be Machida.
Yeah.
I think, you know, Jones is great and his striking is great, but he's a wrestler by nature. So Machida is a striker by nature and a really unorthodox striker. So, you know, I think if there's anyone to give him problems, it's going to be Machida.
Okay, and as we move down the list of our questions, we ask this pretty much for everyone that's on the show. Any street fighting stories?
No.
No street fighting stories?
The last street fight I was in, I was about 12 years old, and it was behind a Little League baseball field. So it didn't come out in my favor.
Yeah, we'll pass on that.
Not really. Yeah.
The name game. Tell me what comes to mind when you hear these names. Number one, okay. Jason High.
Jason High, good memories. You know, I had a great fight against him, welcomed me into the UFC. But also, he's a good guy, man. I've gotten to talk to him a fair amount. He's a good guy and a great fighter.
Anthony Johnson.
Head kick. End of story.
Rick Story.
Greatest night of my life.
Johnny Hendricks.
Bitter. I'm bitter. He's gotten me on 2 occasions.
And the final one, the boss, Dana White.
Thankful, want to shake his hand, just grateful for the opportunity that he's given me, because I am literally living my dream.
Okay, and that pretty much wraps up the interview. Anything that you'd like to promote on the show, such as your Twitter, sponsors, or website?
Absolutely. If you guys follow me on Twitter, @SpaniardMMA, my website, charlie-brenneman.com, and if you haven't liked my fan page on Facebook, Charlie the Spaniard Brenneman, please do so.
Awesome, man. Thanks for taking the time. I know we had a little bit of confusion. It's all good.
No problem. No problem, man. Thank you.
Yep, thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.